And we're live.
Woohoo!
Everybody, welcome to Does Christianity Endorse Slave Morality? And I'm going to use this voice for the rest of the day, like a news anchor. Yeah.
For the rest.
First of all, I would like to know how you all are doing this great morning / evening / night, because we're all over the world. To you,
My
Brooke.
week has been going well.
Back to you, Brooke.
I'm doing well, bro. I'm doing well. The pubs have just opened out here in the UK. So I managed to go out to my local pub and see a couple of my friends and a couple of the regulars. I'm moving out to Wales on Tuesday. So I've literally got 2 more days out here before I pack it all up and head out to Wales and a town called Aberdeen, a beautiful little place out in the valleys. So I'm looking forward to that. Didn't get much sleep last night. You know, I was drinking a couple of rum and cokes. The coke tends to keep you up, and that's Coca-Cola, just in case anybody's questioning.
Is it the 1900 formula or modern? The question.
1919, actually, but yeah, that's a whole other story. But yeah, I didn't get much sleep last night. But as I said, there's just so much to do. I've been packing up, getting ready. I don't really have a lot of notes for today's show. I'm glad that you're going to be defining it for our audience, but I'm sure it'll be still an interesting discussion. So back to you there, Conk.
Oh, good. Well, I also had a long night chatting with some bros. They might come watch the stream. I sent it to them. They were interested because we talked about this topic a little bit. But yeah, it was cool. We had a late night until about 2:30 chatting. And then I came home and still was dumb and played some video games and watched Netflix even after that. So, but I'm here. I'm running on about 4 hours, so it's all good. Still closing on my house, doing all that dumb paperwork. Got my inspection, and they said, like, it wasn't perfect, but they said it's the easiest inspection they had for a 60-year-old house. So it's like everything was minor issues except one thing. So they were very, yeah. So that's good news. No crazy repairs or overhauls that we needed. So that's awesome. Bobby, what about you? What's going on?
Yes, Conk. I'm reporting there's always that delay. I got the earpiece on.
Like you did that too well. You did that too well.
I was waiting to do that too. No, I'm doing good. Brooke kind of got my Catholic ears perked up. He had a Roman Coke. No, I'm just kidding. But
do tell.
Hey, I thought you were Orthodox, man. You Orthodox, you shouldn't be drinking Roman Cokes. No, but
long story.
Yeah, you're supposed to drink White Russian Cokes. Is that how that works?
Yes, White Russian Cokes.
How long will this bit go?
I'm just tired, man.
We all.
Yeah, I'm in the no notes club too. I'm just gonna wing it. I'm just gonna use some spontaneous genius tonight, and yeah, I've had a pretty chill week. Things are winding down in Thailand. I'll be flying out in 27 days back to America, North America. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, I'm just same old, really. So, which is good news.
Excellent.
Back to you, Conk.
Thanks, Bobby. And now we're gonna head over to AMOS with traffic. AMOS, what's going on?
Wait, I gotta get like a.
I was waiting for him to delay it, dude. I'm waiting for him to hold his earpiece. Like,
no, I gotta. Well, this probably wouldn't get us in too much trouble, would it? Let's see here. What do we got?
Are we trying to get an intro?
Guys, this is a trick. This is how you compensate for not doing any show prep. You just kind of goof around.
Yeah, we just goof around for like the first 20 minutes.
Oh, not that kind of helicopter. Sorry.
Long way to go.
Exactly. As you can see, coming down the 95, there is pretty heavy traffic. As there is a 15-car pileup now.
It might have been me because I just landed the helicopter here.
Exactly.
To get a better view.
No, everything's good. I think just like everyone else, I'm kind of running on like less than 4 hours. I literally was like, I mean, anyone that knows, I do the show in my room, so my bed's just over there, and I just I had to get 3 alarms to wake up in 15 minutes. So because I know I'm gotta get up, I gotta get up. So
would you say you have a Trinitarian view of your alarms?
One for the Father, one for the Son, one for the Holy Spirit, and then I wake up.
A lot of ones in there. Sure, it's not a Unitarian view. No.
No. I put little buttons, one here, and no, I'm just kidding. Wake me up.
Testicles, wallet, watch. Right?
Exactly. But yeah, doing pretty good over here. So it's good to have Bobby over here on the no notes team. We've been here for the entire time. So
that's it, baby. Gotta stick together, man.
Dude, I got 99 problems, but notes ain't one. What's up?
Good on you.
So, back to you, Conk.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, so the topic of the stream, if you read it, it clearly it says, "Does Christianity endorse slave morality?" So when I originally thought of this topic, I was thinking about a Christian's relationship with power. Both on the macro scale, you could talk about politics or authority or climbing some type of corporate or church ladder. But then there's also the micro scale. And I think that one, to me personally, I like talking more about, where it's what's my relationship with power? Should we be grinding it on TV like Kenneth Copeland, trying to get us a free airplane so we don't have to fly with demons? That tube of demons, if you fly commercial. But so there's that one extreme power, but then there's also the other half where I see a lot of people, especially the outside looking in at church, they're oh, church is just slave morality. It's the opiate for the masses. It's just everybody patting themselves on the back for how poor and suffering they are. Right. And so I don't know if you guys have seen those thoughts from other people as well on either side of the extremes.
Well, I would have to say that. No.
Yeah, go on.
I forgot to do my news delay, but because I'm across the world, so there's got to be that 5-second delay. But I would say yes and no. I would say Christianity does endorse slave morality, but it doesn't. And here's what I mean. I mean, we had multiple biblical authors that refer to themselves as slaves of Christ, right? That's how they introduce themselves. But slavery to Christ is obviously implies freedom from other things that held us bound, because that's what Jesus came to do. When the Son sets free is free indeed. So it's almost like we have a choice. It's like we could either be a slave to Christ, which is actually freedom, compared to being slaves of the devil, which we're all born under with original sin. So that I would say yes and no in that area. But as far as what you're saying, are you asking, or is the rhetorical question of the show title, should Christians apologize for being empowered? In other words, if power is a real thing, should Christians apologize for it?
Or give it up, even,
Well, I think I put power in the same category as water. Okay. Water is not good. Water is not bad. Water is water. You can either use water to quench your thirst, or you can use it to drown someone. You can either use fire to cook food for a hungry homeless person, or you could use fire to commit insurance arson. Right. So I think power in and of itself is not inherently good or bad. It just is. What's bad is the bad use of power. What's good is the good use of power.
Okay. Yeah. So it's more of and I think that's something also I believe in, where it's how I view the material world, or money or wealth or power or status. I think the Christian response shouldn't be love it or hate it, but be indifferent to it.
Exactly.
Right? I don't have a very special relationship with my hammer or screwdriver. Right. They're tools to use, if that makes sense. And so I don't know if you guys see that as well, or should power be bad? Does power corrupt? absolute power corrupts absolutely. Do we want to go down that line? You know what I mean? Is there a way for Christians to be powerful and not be, succumb to all the other problems of powerful people? What do you guys think?
I mean, it's a very interesting question. When you first proposed this this topic, I think we did a poll, and we all decided to go down this road. I was thinking in terms of, in terms of using power in society, sometimes governmental power. Do we want a theocracy, for instance? Or what kind of influence should a Christian have in terms of their public service? And these types of things. When you mentioned the micro thing, that was also very interesting in terms of the structure of the church itself, which has evolved over time. At one point it was just a gathering in a house, and now we've got this kind of, the structure with leadership and all these other different types of things. So that's kind of where I thought we were going with the discussion. So I probably should have had the conversation with you before. So
no, dude. Power is a very vague, broad topic. Take it anyway. Yeah.
That's kind of what I was thinking. So I'll start with the first one, because there is a lot of political upheaval, and especially since you guys just celebrated Treason Day, we can talk a little bit about the role of religion in the government, for instance. And this is something, there's a lot of contention, especially the Republican right or the Christian right in the US. They're very obsessed with the idea you must have a Christian president and Christian leaders and all these different types of things. And while I don't really care what the person's religion is, I think there is a distinction between our role as Christians in our personal life. I think the Christian faith is very much about your personal relationship with your Creator. And as a secondary point, it's your personal relationship with your fellow man. So it's vertical and then horizontal. The government is not vertical. The government is only concerned when you start to interact with other people. So obviously there's a little nuance. And of course it overlaps because it all deals in the realms of morality. But I don't think it's necessary. I don't think you have to necessarily have, the Christianity as some kind of constitutional form of government or something like that. In fact, I think it's quite counterproductive. We've seen the past where Christian nations have existed, and they didn't exist for very long, right? Just to put it lightly. So I think that is a distinction. So I, for one, am actually a very big proponent of the separation of church and state to a point. In the sense, I do think that the government's role is very different. While it can be influenced by theology, I don't think it should be. In one sense, because that one theology could come in, another theology could come in and undo the first, and so forth. And I believe Jesus kind of makes that distinction when he's saying, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, render unto God that which is God's. And even in Jesus's depiction unto his disciples, at one point he's like, don't take any sword, don't take anything when you go out. Of course, he after he left, he did say to buy a sword and so forth. But then he also talked about the role of the centurion or the Roman soldier. And he says, the soldier doesn't carry the sword in vain, and that the government acts as God's sword and instrument of justice upon the earth. So I think in Scripture, we do see the distinction between how God deals with national governments versus how he deals with individual people. That's kind of my thought on that thing. And I guess on the next round table, we could probably look at like church structure and these types of things.
Yeah, because as the village Catholic, I mean, I'll own. I'm huge on church. Yeah. Well, we got a child we got to raise, right? Takes a village of it. But talking about power, huh? But no, I mean, I love church history, but I love church history with integrity, which means I don't ignore the dark sides of Catholic church history. Part of which, the Borgias, I call them a Luther-making machine. Like a lot of what happened in the Protestant Reformation was a response to how corrupt, at least the papacy had become by that time with Alexander VI. I don't think there would be a Martin Luther without an Alexander VI, because he was the Pope kind of leading up to that. And the decadent, excessive church culture that Luther criticized at that time with his 95 Theses was largely built up by the Borgia racket, Correct. and by the Medicis, and the church is an institution, founded by Christ but run by sinners. So, power struggles, oftentimes ills that we see in society, it shouldn't be this way, But ills that we see in society usually creep into the church. So if you have a 50% divorce rate or whatever the divorce rate is in society, you have the same rate of divorce in the church. If 8 out of 10 men in any given room you walk into consume porn, you could say the same thing if you walk into a men's Bible study, and on with examples of how culture oftentimes corrupts church. And I don't think power is immune from that. But yeah, we should definitely tackle that more in depth in a coming show. But as far as, I guess, pertinent to tonight's topic, man, I just lost my train of thought. I'll kick it to Amos.
We'll get back to it. Yeah.
What? No.
See, this is why you have notes, guys.
Oh, we're holding on by the
this
threads,
is why you have
man.
sleep.
I know, man. Running on fumes over here.
Yeah. I was gonna say, this is why you need sleep. No, it's definitely interesting. Like the discussion of power and Christians and the church and such gets really muddy and messy because you get this weird wave of evangelicals that are kind of very much for like a Christian president that want to, we want a Christian president that's in office and he's there to do whatever he needs to do to lead the country and all this, and they'll unify in that. But we'll still have 40,000 different denominations, which I think is good. Like having a difference of opinion kind of keeps the church from getting too like power within the church. I think being so divided is probably a good thing. For how unified the evangelical church can get over certain issues. Thank God that there's so many denominations that they can't really work together that well.
Amen. Decentralized by force.
I think it's more decentralized by circumstance, like the difference in opinion over so many different things. But at least they'll at least agree. Whether it's true or not, they'll agree that basically like Trump was sent by God or something. They'll agree. Obama is the Antichrist.
Wait, are we in Tennessee right now? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
We're in Bible Belt Central.
And then you'll get some interesting. I don't know if you guys remember. So, I had the pleasure of growing up here in Minnesota in one of the more interesting districts when it came to being Minnesotan and the congressional district I was from. I was born. Well, not born. Well, I was born in that area, but basically,
for a second, I thought you were going to say, "I just was not born."
I know. I was thinking the same thing. It's like,
I was born.
I was created in a lab for $6 million.
From Minnesota, and the people that were during my upbringing, the two senators that were there were Amy Klobuchar and Al Franken. That was kind of like just as I was coming out of high school and such. Now, while I was in school, just take a wild guess at which Minnesota congresswoman who had a bid at the president was from my area.
Mm-hmm.
Who was a Republican? Does anyone know? Remember?
I have no idea.
Michelle Bachmann.
Yeah. So I was like, it was this really interesting time of Michelle Bachmann, Al Franken, Amy Klobuchar, like being from where I was,
Jesse Ventura.
Jesse Ventura was actually while I was still living in Taiwan, but it's just there was excuse me, there was just the way she would talk about stuff. She was kind of like she said some stuff about like, if you believe this and this, you're not American or something. She was so pushed kind of like by the evangelical right. Let's just say there was a church that I used to go to that got in trouble for indirectly endorsing her.
Well, you remember the jab she took at Herman Cain? Remember he talked about my 999 program, and she was the one who's like,
I don't remember that. I mean, I just remember just the religious side of it. Where
that's what I'm saying. She was like, if you turn 99 upside down, the devil's in the details.
Oh yeah. So Yeah, I mean that's kind of one of the first things I learned about was I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term dominionism.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
It's kind of a
Church to take dominion over the earth kind of thing.
yeah, it's
Oh,
kind of
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's that the sort of the doctrine and the theology surrounding, taking dominion over the earth and to the level of Christians should be in political power in all ways. And
It's
I'm
kind
like,
of on Trotskyism, where they take over the schools, they take over the government, they take over like the seats. Of
yeah,
power.
because because evolution is only a theory, so we should teach creationism in schools. We should what else? I mean that was kind of like at the turning point, I think, coming into sort of the we'll just say the pre SJW era. And I mean, I think it could have been just as bad either way. You have your more left-leaning ideologies that are creeping into schools and being taught, but then you go over to like crap, I lost my train of thought. Jesus.
Everybody go to bed.
This is the 30-minute power hour section that we're introducing. We'll leave the chat open for you guys to talk while we get some Z's.
Well, you just had to like throw Tom Bombadil's message right there as I was talking. And my mind just,
I saw
went
that.
out.
and I was like, "What?"
We're gone now.
But it's like, yeah,
Tom Bombadil just revealed Amos's kryptonite. Super chat.
No. It's just right in the middle of a thought. Yeah, since he's still. Yeah, we'll have to talk to Tom about that. Why you still believe in that dominionism nonsense? So, yeah, I personally just believe like political power and all that like should just be kind of left to people themselves, separate from religion. So if people want to get into power and they want to run for office and stuff, I think it should be on principle instead of based on religion. Now, if they're in some pretty crazy religions, I think that would affect their principles. So it's not like we're going to go push some, really really crazy types that are out there. Like if I'm going to be,
and
huh?
We're doing LeVay. We're doing some Satanism. Didn't you guys have a
I don't know,
statue of
man.
Satan in
In
I don't know,
Michigan,
man.
they do. They've got a
Michigan,
Baphomet
right.
in Michigan.
I mean, if you get some, get some cool Satanists in there. I mean, as long as they're not want to do sacrifices in the, the chambers of Congress, I think we're good.
That would be Luciferian, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of cleanup. Yeah.
That was my issue in 2012. I was very torn, man, because you got Obama. I can't vote for.
I mean, those
him.
animals were pretty torn too that they sacrificed.
Well, yeah, but then what got me is, Romney was the lesser of two evils in 2012, but he was a Mormon. So, like, what used to kind of worry me about Newt Gingrich, who I thought was brilliant, until he talked about mining a colony on the moon, setting up like a moon colony, and I'm like, man, if Gingrich wants to set up a colony on the moon, and that made me afraid to vote for him, how could I vote for a guy who might want to try to set up a colony on planet Kolob? And so that is kind of the conflict I had, like, because I do believe that religion and politics are inseparable. They have to be intertwined because, the founding fathers, when they enshrined the Constitution, I don't think the United States is capable of lasting without a Judeo-Christian worldview. I think it was built on that. And so I think it's our heritage as a nation to have that Judeo-Christian outlook.
Judeo-Christian worldview is kind of subjective in a way. So you want to be careful that it's Judeo-Christian worldview and not Judeo-Christian theocracy.
Yeah, there is a difference.
True. But a theocracy, when I think of a theocracy, I'm thinking of an official government-sponsored religion. And that's where the separation of church and state protection comes in. In other words, the government...
Well, I'm talking about government-sponsored... No, I'm sorry. Actually, I should be more clear. I'm talking about church-sponsored government.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think... Here's the thing. I think people on the right and on the left are kind of confused about the best way to go about that, because you got people on the right who want separation of church and state. But then, for fear that the state's going to take over the church. And I think we saw a lot of that under Obama, like with the human, what was it, the Health and Human Services thing, the abortion mandate, the contraceptive mandate with Obamacare, who I blame the Catholic bishops for. That's a long story. But because Obamacare would not have passed had the U.S. bishops not meddled, which, man, that really ticked me off when they did that. But the other thing, you have people on the left who also advocate for separation of church and state, yet they expect the state to kind of like be the church, to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked. Like they put all the corporal works of mercy on the state on the one hand, and they look to the state for things they should be looking to the church for. And I think a lot of them look to the church for things that they should be looking to the state for. Like, you know, like a lot of, I'll only speak for the Catholic bishops, but like for the most part, most of the American Catholic bishops are like wannabe social workers. They're like wannabe Democrat utopia social workers. And I think they should.
Thank you.
Well, you're one of the good ones, Conk.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think they should stick to their day jobs, which is catechizing the faithful, evangelizing them, sacramentalizing them, and preparing them for eternity, not for some unattainable social justice utopia. That's just never going to happen. All attempts at utopia always end in dystopia. And I think we've seen a lot of that in the last few months. So I do believe in separation of church and state in that sense. When you got all these leftist church people trying to set up this utopia, you know, it never works. It's like they're ignorant of history.
Yeah. Yeah, I had this talk with my friends last night because we're talking about the difference between like the communism, socialism aspect versus the capitalism aspect. Because depending if you're asking a left or right Christian, like they'll say one of them is God ordained and one of them isn't, right? God wants us to be communists or God wants us to be capitalists, you know, yada yada. But I don't know. I don't think he cares that much. I think I don't know. And I was talking to Brooke about this right before we started live, that like the more you try to like force everybody to get along and sing kumbaya and equality, the in order to keep that going, the more oppressive your police force has to be to keep it that way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So like there has to be some extreme centralized power to keep everybody equal and happy. You know what I mean? Because eventually somebody's going to want your stuff, or somebody's going to realize they're getting the short end of the stick because they're doing a lot more harder work for the same pay as, you know, Billy the janitor downstairs, right?
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
you got to
power
figure out
gain.
what are your goals though? Like, do you want equality of outcome or equality of opportunity?
Right.
I mean, especially, I think the Catholics had this as an issue back in the 60s and 70s, which was the adoption of liberation theology, which again was the merge of the Marxist ideology with, you know, Christian theology. And it was very big in Latin America and stuff like that. We saw the revolutions and, you know, the rise of Shea and all these guys.
Wow, how did that turn out?
Yeah, well, too soon to
Mountains of
tell.
bodies and rivers of blood. Like
yeah, I heard Venezuela's doing pretty good right now. So,
yeah. Well, no, it's not clear enough. Apparently, you can't draw any decisive conclusions. But
it turned out so well. There's caravans of refugees that are, you know.
I mean, how do you really like deal with the two sides, so many parts of the world? Like, you know, on one hand, you've got American Christians that are cheering on the Chinese Christians for, you know, rising up and sort of starting to come into like. Not taking over, but definitely radically like changing how their country's future could be. And so there's kind of, you know, hey, you know, yeah, most of them are kind of in hiding and doing what they're doing, but, you know, the Chinese church is growing like crazy and, you know, God's moving in China. But then, so they want that. But then over here, we've got a huge problem where too many people, you know, too much of God is moving in government, I think, depending upon how you go about it, because you get this, you know, it's either the SJW, the left-leaning kind of ideology is going to completely just change the fabric of our society, or you're going to get some really twisted right-wing, you know, essentially a dominionist kind of view of just like, oh, we need to like completely like start taking the culture into a very, very Christian way, to the point that like, you know, under the guise of you know, separation of church and state, it becomes like lots and lots of politicians being elected solely on the basis that, oh, they're Christians.
Well, like are we already doing that? You have to say you're Christian to even get a chance.
Yeah, and it was really interesting. I think what was it? Kennedy was the first non-Protestant, the first Catholic president, which was, I kind of was like, why is that such a big deal? Then you look in history and you go, oh yeah, that's why. Like, kind of like Woodrow Wilson was the first president with a PhD. Where that got us, But anyway, that's another thing.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure Trump's bought a couple PhDs, but
coming out of the 50s and 60s, all of these ideologies were really on the forefront because of the Cold War and other things like that. So very clear lines were kind of drawn in the sand. And, the Russians were Eastern Orthodox for the most part. So there was kind of like a moving away from the apostolic faiths. That kind of sentiment came in the US, where you had to be part of the Protestant Reformation to be like truly American. So this is nonsense, really. But it was actually like part of the programs coming out of the CIA and stuff. It's all bullshit, but that's where we start to see these lines. I don't think anybody like Trump got into office and he doesn't even know a verse of the Bible. I think he held up the Bible a couple times.
2 Corinthians.
When you got Paula White, Paula White's like a spiritual director, right?
Yeah, well, that's like leaving the hospital in charge of the accountant. It's not a great appointee. But you think today in this kind of 2020, people are that concerned about who the leader is and their faith? As long as it's not crazy, kind of really out there. But I think if it's any mainstream denomination, people are kind of okay with that.
Well, the Bible Belt's its own thing. But yeah, go ahead, Bobby.
Well, I do believe, whoever's living on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, you're the most powerful man in the world, like, period. Sure. And if you're the leader of the free world, I do think the United States, it is a beacon of freedom to the world. Like, that is one thing I agree with. If you think back, like, what would the world be if the United States didn't exist? That's why shows like The Man in the High Castle are so intriguing, because that's what life would have been like if the Japanese and the Nazis won World War II, had we not successfully intervened. So I think the leader of the free world, who's also the commander of the most powerful army in the world, people forget the presidential theme song. Dun, dun, da, 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 da. That song's called Hail to the Chief.
Yes.
Right? So that's saluting our military commander. So I think the most powerful man in the world, the leader of the free world, I believe he should be righteous. He should be upright and righteous and just, because with great power comes great responsibility. And now, obviously, that's the ideal. That doesn't mean that's always going to be the reality. We've had some very imperfect presidents, to put it mildly, and as a result, that trickles down. It really does.
I would argue that's never the reality, though. If we're talking about if we're talking about, like, so first and foremost, like, the Christianity aspect of, like, there's no one good but God, all men's righteousness is like filthy rags to the Lord, right? And so I think we're never going to get the righteous doing it for the people politician. It's in politics' nature to be Machiavellian, right?
Yes.
Which is,
say what
gets you popularity votes, and then do whatever the hell you want when the camera's off, right? And so you have to be good at that just to get to that level of politics. You know what I mean?
Trump is, the evangelical president, but then it's like, people point out, upright and righteous, right? With all the, they'll try to, the typical evangelical view to kind of look at him through and just be like, all the women he divorced and all the children he has and all the women he's been with and all this stuff and all the stuff he was pretty much a Democrat beforehand, and then they kind of, they'll like the standard of that they put upon him kind of changes to, God uses imperfect people. Well, then, if that's true, then, God uses everyone then, right? Like, did God use Mao? Did God use Hitler? Like, where does this line get to? I'm not, slow down. I'm not calling Trump Hitler, by the way. Just don't freak out.
But we are calling him Mao.
For that distinction,
it's like the way that the church nowadays, the evangelical movement, will go about these presidential candidates is they'll just they think he's just like spaghetti, and they just throw like, there, he's stuck. There's a little stick in there. Like, it's good. It's good. Like that's our guy. It's like
El Dante.
yeah. It's just, no, we got him. Like, it works.
He's our guy.
Yeah. It's and then they're complete like, and then they throw that spaghetti to the people and like, see, we can make spaghetti. Yeah, we got spaghetti, and it's like, dude, there's no sauce, there's no cheese, there's nothing. You literally just cooked spaghetti and was like, yeah, see, spaghetti. It's like, yeah, it technically is spaghetti, but no one's gonna eat that, So it's like, it's not about like getting so stuck on making spaghetti, but you should just be free to make whatever freaking pasta you want. As long as the people, it's usually sorry, I just did that.
Make sure you drink it with a Diet Coke, right? And some McDonald's on the side.
Oh, but yeah, like I mean, people get so caught up in it's got to be this kind of, this kind of pasta, this kind of thing.
Spaghetti, no linguine allowed, No
yeah.
Fettuccine,
Then like a little macaroni gets in there, and people go, oh, well, stuff happens. Like that's the whole like just trying to figure stuff out. Like, oh yeah, this president totally did this, totally did that, and he's like this candidate, that candidate, and they're like, oh yeah, God just uses them.
I got a confession I got to make. I got to out myself on something because my conscience is eating me alive. And I got to out myself. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me throw it up.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead and throw it up.
It shows us.
Okay.
What?
I actually posted this a few years ago. And I still believe it. I still think it's.
You're only showing. You're only showing us.
I would be a hypocrite not to show this. I mean, okay, I did post this a few years ago. Come back here with those babies. I'm not done late term aborting yet, so you can see Hillary. This is Hillary.
So I mean, so look at that. Like this is.
But I do believe this is true, though. Like, look at all the legislation. I mean, I believe it's true. But this is that evangelical pro-Trump thing we're talking about.
This is a very boomer tier meme.
Yeah, Bobby, I didn't know you were my 70-year-old grandpa.
Meme review.
but here's the thing. Like, I've been hearing a lot of people lately doing a "I told you so" victory dance about abortion just being struck down, and they're blaming, you sucker pro-lifers. See, the Republicans let you. But that, John Roberts was a Bush judge, not Trump. That wasn't Gorsuch or
so
Kavanaugh that struck down.
Right.
Okay, you can stop sharing now. I've outed myself.
Yeah. So I mean, this gets into like a whole different thing then. Like,
are we going down the abortion road?
No. Not too much of that. But I'm just. Here's the thing. Like, and this is where I kind of inject my libertarian view to it, and I think some of you guys might agree as well. But basically, like, just is it the as Christians, as individuals in power, in political power that are influencing these laws, do we have the right to legislate morality then?
Yes. Well, I do.
No.
Well, here's the thing. When it comes to legislating morality, I believe that the people that want to get their agendas pushed that have done a lot of damage to this country. I mean, we can't ignore 60 million dead babies. We can't ignore family being destroyed. We can't ignore gay marriage being like, there's a lot of things that have happened in this country that are very bad for the country. And the only way to get those things through is you have to take these issues that are fundamentally moral issues at their core, like abortion, okay, same-sex marriage. Those are fundamentally moral issues. So if you try to get something passed through as a moral issue, it's not going to fly. It's going to be voted down because the country's still very moral. So what they do is they say, well, we got to take, well, hold on, let me finish. We got to take these things and turn them into political issues. Like, rather than making it right versus wrong, because that's not going to fly. Most people are going to do what's right. We got to make it right versus left. And I think a lot of things that are moral issues are political issues. And people have been brainwashed to think in terms of looking at them through a political lens instead of a moral lens. And I do believe that that's wrong.
I would actually say there is a distinction between looking at it from a moral lens versus a political lens. And I think, not to go down the abortion road, but to use it as an example, right? So I am very much personally pro-life. And if I was ever in a position where, I impregnated somebody and so forth, I know that would be my position. But I understand, I come from a country where abortion is illegal, right? So Trinidad and Tobago, abortion is illegal. But that does not stop us from doing 25,000 abortions a year, usually done illegally, half of which results in the death of the mother, because they do not have access to the care. So it's kind of like, I understand politically these women are going to attempt an abortion whether I agree with it or not. So out of the the best of the worst evils, politically I would say, yeah, I will support limited access to abortion. I'd rather have it legalized where we don't lose the mother as well as the child, the lesser of two evils in that respect. And that's how I could make a distinction. Again, not imposing individual morality, upon mass.
Because that's essentially like kind of what I'm thinking too, is I think the government has no right to interfere in moral issues except if there's some sort of ethical argument to be made. Like murder being illegal is a very clear, like, not only a moral but also an ethical thing, because killing people tends to be pretty bad for society unless you want to justify it through some means of war. But people want to kill each other and do that, then you're taking away from people's. You gotta understand, what is the framework you're operating within. Is it freedom, or is it creating, like, what is the foundation of America, really? I mean, when it comes down to it, is it freedom? So are people free to make their own decisions? Do we really believe that God created humans to have free will? Because at the end of the day, even with the craziest of Christians, we still are very much like, I mean, just think about the worst Christians in America right now. Really, the absolute worst is, you think of like Westboro Baptist Church, probably, right?
Oh yeah, they're pretty bad.
And the worst they do is just make people feel like crap at funerals. Like, they're not going out really like blowing up.
They're going to hell.
Yeah.
God hates F words.
They're not going around blowing people up and doing all this stuff. So like that, there's that. But then I think where it becomes really damaging is when you starting to justify kind of where is the standard of how much influence some of these beliefs should have in the daily life of everyday people. You'll have families that'll split up and hate each other because someone in the family decided to come out of the closet, but it's not like they're gonna, like, the parents aren't gonna step in and force someone and whatever. Like, they're still gonna be like, okay, I believe you're going to hell, but I don't agree, but you're still gonna live your life. And I think that level of just freedom and allowing people to make their own decisions should go as far as, even like when it gets to issues of because you'll see people will argue for religious liberty in some sense, but then they'll argue against it in other ways.
Yeah, so the statue is a great example.
So I mean, you could, because it's like people will be for religion. So I'll throw in a couple issues, which will include abortion, just as the example. So people will argue for religious liberty when they say, like, doctors have the right to refuse treatment based on their religious beliefs when it comes to let's say transition, abortion, and stuff like that. But then you can go and say, well, technically that's not really that. That's more complicated than just saying that, because most of the healthcare industry is heavily subsidized by the government. So essentially, healthcare is just an arm of the government, and the arm of the government should be providing equal care to everyone.
School systems too, right?
School systems too. Yeah, you need to. You can't start changing certain. I mean, granted, states want to go and play around with their different views of, some schools will teach creationism as an equal and opposite sort of theory as like evolution almost. And it's like, that's not science. There's scientific, so it's like, so where is the line going to be drawn? How much freedom are you really as a country? You should allow the freedom that people should have a diverse view of, beliefs, but do you legislate for or against it? Or do you just take the stance of people should be free to make their own decisions? So if the problem is abortion, and it is a moral issue, and you do believe that, so the ultimate freedom should be then the government has absolutely no say in it, doesn't endorse it one way or the other.
Here's where I disagree, though. Like, here's why I got to go into non-echo chamber mode here. Is that, which is why I love this show, by the way.
Come on.
Is that if
Conform.
The thing is, if I thought the way you thought on that, Amos, like if society as a whole thought that way, as a black guy, I'd still be in chains. Because a few hundred years ago, there were people that, quote unquote, imposed their morality on others. They were called abolitionists.
Yeah.
So let me give you an example.
No, you can actually make like a free market sort of ethical argument against slavery.
Well, but
having
it wasn't
with less access to rights and resources is overall bad for society.
True, but it wasn't free market capitalism that ended slavery.
There's a lot of people that will argue slavery would have ended without these laws going into place anyways. It would take longer because slavery was actually a less economic system. The cotton gin and certain technologies was making farming so much cheaper to do that you really didn't need slaves economically.
But all I'm saying is, when people say I'm personally opposed, and I know this isn't an abortion show, we're definitely going to do one in the future. We don't have notes, so we're just kind of
we're just winging it.
But the thing is,
beer.
What kind of beer would that be? No, but the thing,
Corona.
but the thing is, when I hear people say, "Well, I'm personally opposed to abortion, but I'm not going to, stop others from doing it," that'd be like saying, "Well, I'm personally opposed. I would never own slaves myself, but I don't have a problem with other people owning slaves." As a matter of fact, I'm personally opposed to slavery, but I'm going to make sure I'm going to march to Washington to make sure that others have the rights to own slaves. Like, it's the same argument. Like, you ask, where does that line drawn? I mean, if I see it,
so what are you got to look at a bigger picture now? Then, so what are some of the by removing the government from the debate of abortion, and you basically allow it to go to the private sector and people do it that way, but you keep it legal because here's the ramifications of radical sort of pro-life laws. You get countries that get ridiculous epidemics of women dying of botched abortions. Here's what you also get. You get inquisitions looking into miscarriages as possible abortion. They'll think, what did you do? Did you basically a woman who is the standard of what is guilty of abortion goes as far as not taking care of herself in a pregnancy. So do you count as that? Like, what if an upstanding Christian mother decided to have a Diet Coke and somehow they can, some very corrupt government officials can weave it into there and go, oh, aspartame killed your baby, so we're going to ban Diet Coke.
Yeah, but to me that's a fringe argument though, because it's kind of like this.
That's the problem though, is it will go down that path.
So what would you prefer, 60 million deaths or the 25,000 deaths of Brooks country? I mean, like, in other words, if it's the lesser of two evils,
well, let's go with Brooks country. I'm saying, like, you have, if half of the abortions, so here's what would happen. So 60 million plus 30. No. Plus 30 million botched. I mean, granted, abortions in the U.S. might be a little bit different, like even the worst abortions, but you would have, as you're basically turning the standard into, now there's going to be the abortion deaths plus the botched abortion.
There's no way that there'd have been as many illegal abortions as there were legal like the numbers defy that. Like before Roe versus Wade, yeah, there were back alley abortions, coat hanger abortions, but it's nothing like the organized conglomerate we see today. But my thing is, like, the only reason
you just take the money out of it so the government has nothing to do with it. That's what I'm saying.
One of the reasons I love Trump, because he defunded Title IX.
That's fine. Yeah. So this is the solution that I believe. And then I don't want to try to turn it into like, what government should do. I'm just saying is
right.
What level do we want government involved in our lives? And where are we going to, like, where is the line drawn into? Where does religion play into it? Like, you have to be like humanity, like the country as a whole could agree that murder is bad, religious or not. But there's such a division when it comes to these issues like abortion, like even gay marriage to a stance, even though it's considered constitutional essentially, that you really just, I mean, if marriage is such a religious and sacred sacrament, why is government involved in it? Why can't people just do whatever they want? I mean, if Christians in good conscience want to just go do whatever they want to perform gay marriages, that's their right. Like, what does that have an effect on Christianity as a whole? Yeah, you probably will have a split in the church, but here, the thing is do we really want government telling us what we can and can't do to that level? Because anytime they do, behind a moral argument, there's always that slippery slope of going one way or the other.
Well, before we move on, because I agree with Conk, we should probably segue to answer Terrence Hosseing's question. The only reason I brought up abortion as an example is because, and this is where I, like I said, go into no echo chamber mode, is that I do believe that this allergy that a lot of people have to quote unquote imposing their morality on others, I think that's the Christian thing to do. Like if I saw a guy trying to kidnap a kid and drag him into a white van so he could like human traffic the kid, you best believe I'm going to impose my morality on that piece of crap.
Hold that point
and try
out.
to
There's a slight caveat in that it's not that we don't believe in imposing our morality. We oppose imposing our morality through the use of state. There is a distinction. So yes,
I am all for education.
Pedophilia is illegal, though.
Yeah.
Right? There's lots of things that are illegal that we would vote for, that we would oppose our morality in a second because they're so terrible. I believe abortion.
This is such a, but you got to consider this is such a larger issue that can have such ramifications one way or the other.
Save it for another show, definitely.
Right. But I just think basically I'm all for education and teaching people to, be responsible and all this stuff. But really, when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, I just think I'm not going to use the state to do it. You want to use the church to do that? That's fine. Church can start making hard stances on who attends and who doesn't, who doesn't, based on different things. But that's totally separate from now. I get to vote, use the ballot box against, to use my will against people, basically.
Well, the will of the people, right?
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to segue this back into the slave and master morality of Nietzsche, because I think it is really relevant here. So, like we were talking before, slave morality is like empathizing, like empathy, kindness, morality, things like that. And then the master morality is more about. So here's a good way to put it. Master morality cares a lot more about good or bad actions. And slave morality cares a lot more about good or evil intentions, right? Do you see the difference? And the main thing is a lot of the slave morality is based on reacting to the master morality's declarations of good or bad actions, right? And I think it's very interesting because when you're talking about intentions, I don't think that's so cut and dry. We like to assume someone has good or evil intentions, but we don't really know that, right? For example, like this is something I thought about when you're showing that boomer meme, Bobby.
Okay, Karen.
It showed Hillary Clinton, the big evil monster trying to kill the kids, and Trump running away and saving them. But that was trying to put a morality on like a political legislative issue, right? Because for me, if I had to guess good or evil intentions for Trump, he's probably doing it as a political piece, right? I don't know if he actually cares about abortion or not, right? I don't really think he considers himself a Republican or a Democrat. He kind of just does whatever the hell he wants, right? He just took the role of Republican to get Republican votes to get a presidency, right?
Yeah.
He's a businessman who knows how to deliver a product to consumers.
The
product is 8 years of Obama was conservatism.
Yeah. So I would say most of us agree that we're pro-life because we think it is a moral issue. A lot more often than not, if a high-end politician or the president or someone saying that, it's literally more of political legislation, right? It's not necessarily. I don't think he necessarily cares about it as much as we think he does. You know what I mean?
For all the sketchy stuff that happens behind closed doors and such with politicians. For the pro-life and pro-choice arguments, most of the time it's just a political move rather than some moral stance. Like now, that's what I think. So you got some guy that's high. Let's say a womanizing, right-leaning, perceived evangelical type might be pro-life all the way because of the political capital he gains from it. But behind the scenes, there might be more than we would like to admit that would totally just do what they feel they have to do if an accident happens. Because
there's lots of hypocrisy.
The political problem of being, first off, being irresponsible with your penis. Second of all, the political ramifications of then okay, do I stay with my pro-life position and take in basically an illegitimate child, or do I just sweep it under the rug because I need to look like an upstanding citizen? A good Christian man that only does what he does with his wife.
Yeah, it's innately natural for people in power to be Machiavellian, right? Especially if you're in a popularity contest like the presidency,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I have a huge rant about why I hate democracy, but we could do that a different time.
Ooh,
Are
spicy.
you Hoppian? Is this what we're doing?
But I mean that instance though of like the boomer meme. I'm going to keep referencing back to that because it's funny. But like it showed Hillary Clinton as a big evil monster and Trump as the hero, and it was talking completely about intentions, right? One is the intended evil monster, and one is the intended all good guy hero in that scenario, right? That people are sharing. But that's that's not the way it is. It's both of them are extreme idealisms, right? But really, at the end of the day, they're just people. They don't have superpowers, and they're not super villains. You know what I mean? They're all people just playing the politics game. So,
But they're running a superpower, though. The sole standing superpower of the world.
but is it even a superpower? I mean, this will be another mini rant. But do countries exist, right? Or is it just something we've all collectively made up in our minds, like a game of Monopoly, right?
We live in a society.
I mean, every time I've crossed the Canada border, there wasn't a huge giant line drawn in the sand saying Canada, like it is on the map. It's just land, right? And we've made up this huge, big system and game to go around it. You know what I mean? But technically, it doesn't have to have weight if you don't want it to. But that's my own little thing.
What would a Canadian invasion look like, though? Would soldiers just go door to door and say, sorry? Like, just knock real hard, you open it, and just say sorry?
Yeah, they'll give you some free medicine and maple syrup, for consolidation prizes.
Hockey lessons.
We'll have to ask Grindstone.
What do you say we open it up? What do you say we open the borders, let some immigrants into the show?
Wow.
Yeah, we'll have to check your papers first, but yeah.
Papers, please.
Well, no, we're in an election year, man. Just come on in, man.
Yeah, and with Unmaster and slave morality, one more point. Like, the good or bad actions of master morality versus the good or evil intentions of slave morality. Like, when you're looking at, like, our red pill friends or reading those kind of books that are literature and being around that, they're all about good or bad actions. You know what I mean? Ignore what people say, just look at what they do. You know what I mean? And so I think that's an interesting power dynamic when you talk about the master and slave morality, because slave morality by its nature has no power, but now they're making it a moral right that they don't have power, if that makes sense. They're on their superior religious moral high horse because they're the oppressed in their mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I think from the red pill perspective that a lot of us talk about and agree with, it's that own personal agency and independence and personal power, right? Where you're judging actions of other people and yourself, right? Because we'll never know their intentions.
It also goes with what Rollo talks about a lot, where, he talks about how, and you see this in the church big time, in the Catholic Church too, especially in like men's movements, men's conferences, things like that. The whole all responsibility, no authority. I mean, that's slave mentality right there, like big time. That guys are just these expendable workhorses. And, we have no authority in the home, but we have all the responsibility. And I think it should be both. I mean, authority should be made to serve, but at the same time, authority should also be respected. And I think that it belongs, authority belongs in, it's a masculine thing. I think women are built to be, it's like our red pill friends say, like women want to submit to strong men. And that carries that I believe that carries even outside of relationships. Women in the church, women in different situations that aren't even romantic relationships. They inherently know when they're dealing with a weak man versus dealing with a strong man. They inherently know if they're watching a show of a guy who's just rambling because he doesn't have notes and he's just kind of speaking as he goes. Like I'm doing right now.
And we got a lot of women followers today.
I'm kind of like the boxer that runs out of breath, so he tries to tie the guy up, figure out his next move.
With you, man. I'm not even here right now.
That's why our callers are going to come to our rescue, because I'm out of gas, guys.
Yeah. Well, speaking of callers, Tom!
What's up?
What's up, bro?
Chilling.
Bold and
What's up,
bin. I
fellas?
love it.
Are you outside during a lockdown? I'm guessing your intentions are evil.
Where's your mask, young man? This is a show about slavery. You should be wearing your slave gear.
Yeah, baby.
Whoa.
It's Florida, man. We do whatever we want here.
Good man.
Well,
Florida man
breaks
calls into
quarantine
religious
again.
talk show.
You know, if you type in your birthday in
Yeah.
Florida, man, there's gonna be some crazy story. Whatever your birth, just type in your birthday in Florida, man, and it will tell you like your horoscope from like the Florida man point of view. I think mine was like an alligator. An alligator got into someone's like house on my birthday.
That sounds healthy.
You
What
have
did you
way
get,
too
Conk?
much time on your hands to figure that out, man.
But you're buying us time without our notes, so I can tell you
Okay,
that.
here, you guys want to see mine? It's Florida man kicking swans in the head to practice karate, arrested for cruelty to animals.
See?
Dude, Florida man dove in and punched a shark to save a dog.
Oh wow, your Florida man's the real hero here.
Hell yeah.
All right, Tom, you got a question for us, or a comment, or a concern?
So Dominionism, but Bethel Church and Kanye West in charge.
No,
Nice.
no, not Bethel. God.
Yeah,
no.
maybe Kanye. I can't get down on Bethel.
Oh,
No
God.
Bill Johnson, no Chris Valentin.
Chris Valentin. Oh, I was a big part of that at one point. In fact, I was their affiliate church in Trinidad. I was very good friends with. And,
We have a lot of friends that are really involved with them.
and who've come out of it. So, I mean, they're doing the best they can. I try not to knock them, but I wouldn't want to put them in charge.
We have mandatory fire tunnels, right? Mandatory.
Oh, my God.
Everyone has to
The
speak in
culture of
tongues.
honor. Everybody stands, no matter who you are.
Stand. Yes. There's gold dust just coming everywhere.
In the air vents.
I'm not
Gold
cleaning that
teeth.
shit up, man.
Everyone gets gold teeth. Fuck stimulus checks. Sorry, I shouldn't curse. Everyone gets gold teeth, right? Angel feathers and
Monetize
gemstones.
I mean-
the 12 cents we made off this show.
I mean, what kind of soaking are we doing? Are we doing the Bethel soaking, or are we doing the Mormon
The
soaking?
Mormon one.
the Kanye
Oh,
soaking when he doesn't get his way.
I don't know what the kids are
Just
calling
don't
soaking
throw.
these days. I don't know what you mean.
Oh
by that.
yeah, so I mean, you've got your like Bethel soaking of like the worship service and all that, but then you've got the Mormon soaking where basically it's not sex if you stick it in and don't move.
Yeah, thrusting
Oh,
is sex,
thrusting.
but putting it
Yeah,
in there is
soaking.
putting it in there. You know, just chilling.
Just the tip.
Just
The Catholic back door, and then the Southern Baptist just dry hump.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I believe in dry humping because it might lead to dancing. So I don't know.
That's the worst.
Yeah, we're going footloose on this. We're going.
Something's definitely loose.
But Tom, do you think Christianity should have power in government at all?
Yeah, I mean that's how I always believe. I believed that we should. Well, okay. Have you guys heard of Kat Kerr? Who's here heard of Kat Kerr?
Yeah, yeah. Wish I did.
Never
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, she was really big for me. Basically, that Pence was going to be president, and then his vice president next. So you have to say a lot of prophets went out on a limb to say like, oh look, Trump's going to be president, because back then it was all projected that he was going to lose, and there's definitely evangelical prophets that went out on a limb to say that. So I'm going to be doing a video on that, just going over. I mean, I'm not impressed by modern prophets because they're very vague, but they at the very least took a 50-50 risk to say Trump is going to win. And, you know, they did that months before, you know, back when the Vegas odds were like very high against them. I think that's somewhat impressive.
I would respect that if it is that they didn't always choose a Republican candidate regardless of the election.
Right.
So they generally, the evangelical right tends to just choose the Republican candidate. So they always say this person is going to win. Even when Obama was supposed to go up and stuff, they were kind of trying to spin who was his opponent, McCain and
Romney.
Yeah, so choosing the political I am so frustrated with prophecy. Probably we could do an entire show about some of the flaky prophecy that's out there.
Yeah.
And while some, you know, you got a 50-50 shot, you shoot at everything that moves, you're going to hit something eventually. So, I mean, I respect your view on that. It doesn't sway me a lot because it was a 50-50 chance, really and truly. And they have a track record of always backing Republicans. So I'd prefer a little more nuance to their prophecy.
I would also argue that
Mhm.
that Mike Pence is worse than Trump. I really hope Trump doesn't die. I really hope.
Well, I'm waiting. I follow. There's the Mark Taylor prophecy, right? The firefighter. That
Yeah,
one
yeah,
was pretty. And then there was actually a Catholic prophecy from like 2-3 decades ago. I don't know, Bobby, have you heard of the Catholic prophecy for Trump?
Was that Ralph Martin?
It was like he wrote it down and he stuck it into this wall of a monastery.
Wow, no. If it's who
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I know there's a guy in Michigan where I'm from, really good guy actually. He's a professor at our local seminary named Ralph Martin, and he made some prophecies in the 70s that came pretty true. Like we're in the thick of what he predicted.
In the 70s, huh?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, like, what made people prophesy anything in the 70s?
Oh man,
Probably
sexual
Probably
revolution at its
Shaft.
peak.
Black Dynamite.
There was a lot of tumult in it.
Dude, that's the
Shaft.
70s. That's all I can think about. That's all. That
Yeah,
was
so
the 70s.
I'm still into
Shut your mouth.
prophecy. Like I've had premonition dreams, nothing crazy. Like I saw a street name that was going to be named after someone a year before it happened once. I have a buddy that he would see like which Pokemon were going to be at the gym of his bus stop for Pokemon Go. Like
Pretty sure you can just wiki that. I don't know if that counts.
Amos,
Okay.
I just read your private chat, Amos.
Huh? Yeah.
That reminds me, the two closest times in the world we were close to world peace was after 9/11 and the first week of Pokemon Go.
Guys, I gotta say,
We've ever got global world peace.
yes.
the highlight of being a part of the show is not the show itself, man. It's what goes on before and after when we're on
the
there.
behind the scenes.
If you guys saw this private chat, you would lose faith in humanity. That's all.
All right. Well, Tom, I might need to let you go. We got another guest waiting in the background.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yeah,
Good to
thanks
see you,
for
bro.
coming on,
Talk
Tom.
soon, man.
Take care, Tom.
We have Thug Life there. What's going on, sir?
Hey,
What's
can
going
you
on,
guys
man?
hear me? Or
Yes.
is this
I
still
love
muted?
you.
Oh, okay. So I didn't come specifically with a question, but I will come up with one and whilst I'm talking. Conk, this is mostly about you.
It always is.
Yeah. I saw your talk with who's it? Rich and Sean. And
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, about blowing up your relationship with your mother.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was real helpful, and
Good one.
I used your example about your grandma, the story that you came up with about your grandmother saying something really humiliating, and you just decided to cut it off right there and then.
Yeah.
Very helpful. And so I finally did it, and it wasn't pretty at all. But mostly this was to say thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's not easy, right? But it's needed.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you never tell guys that you're supposed to do, but it's not written down anywhere. And Jesus Christ, I should have done this. I mean, a little bit of blasphemy in the Christian server, but I should have done this years ago.
Say whatever you want. I don't care. As long as it doesn't get, as long as it's not like a hard arc. But
Yeah, no, this is totally legit. It's just I've just been lurking around for quite a while now. Okay, so I was gonna ask about masculinity in Christianity, which is kind of like your guys' thing, right?
Mhm.
Or the general theme that
Well,
isn't really mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this pet theory that I've been boiling on in the back of my head after I saw this video about this Roman historian. And she said that the Romans, when they were assimilating all of the other religions that they were taking over and integrating with, and they took over the Christians, they corrupted the church a little bit by inserting their more civic, secular style on top of the Christian, like kindness and mercy style.
Oh
So-
yeah. The Greco-Roman influence on Christianity, basically.
Right. So
Yeah.
I always had this theory that Roman Catholicism is the way that we know it today is really a fusion of half of it being Catholic and half of it being Roman. And one of the reasons why we have all of these identity crises with Roman Catholic Church today, I'm Catholic, is because we've gone too far into the Catholic side and not remembered that it has a Roman half to it as well.
Well, as a fellow Catholic, Thug Life Baron, thanks for calling in.
This is purely because of the I made a troll image with Fozzie Bear in gold chains and like Thug Life glasses on. I just decided to roll with it. There's nothing thug about me at all.
Ever since
The
I saw
thug's
your
in the
head,
heart, right? The thug's in the
Yeah,
heart.
it's,
That's what
it's
counts.
totally a joke.
I've just had the old Tupac song going through my head the whole time.
Good man.
No,
If
it's
your man
just
ain't
it's
loving
just a
you right.
troll. Image.
No, I hear you. I like it though.
Yeah.
your man
So
ain't
the
loving you,
Roman and the Catholic issue.
Yeah, so I'll touch on that. So I disagree, and I think you have it backwards because the opposite actually happened. If you look at the Roman Empire, if you look at the practices of the Roman Empire, it was a very barbarous empire. I mean, yeah, they had their poets, they had their philosophers, they had their Caesars, they had their armies, but it was a very barbarous society. And what happened is, if you study the Edict of Milan, it happened in the year 314 AD. Part of the myth surrounding the Edict of Milan is, and basically, for those of you who don't know, the Edict of Milan, people say it's when Christianity was quote unquote legalized, and that's when a lot of people try to trace the origins of the Catholic Church to 314 AD. They say that's when the Catholic Church started, 314 AD with the Edict of Milan. And every time someone
before that they were heretics inside Rome, right?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
were
they were
atheists. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
We were considered atheists and also cannibals because of our belief in the Eucharist. And so the thing is, the Catholic Church actually civilized the Roman Empire, and it was pretty ingenious because the Roman Empire was the heart of the civilized world. They had all the roads, they had the technology. For the gospel to explode quickly, what God did is he injected the gospel into the heart of the Roman Empire, and it spread throughout the whole pagan world. And that's why it spread so fast in those first few centuries. The reason why we're called Roman Catholic, it has nothing to do with the Roman Empire. It has to do with the fact that St. Peter was martyred in Rome. He was the bishop of Rome when he died. We know from 1 Peter 5:13, he said, I write to you from Babylon, which was code word for Rome back then. That was a code word that he would use for the Christians, because if he would have said, I'll write this to you from Rome, he would have given away his location. He would have been a marked man, and that would have hastened his death. If Peter would have died in Constantinople, we'd be called the Constantinopolitan Church. If he would have died in Ephesus, we'd have been called the Ephesian Church. So the fact that the first bishop of Rome died in Rome, whoever his successor was, meaning whoever becomes the bishop of Rome, is the leader of the Catholic Church. So that's why we're called the Roman Catholic Church. It didn't have anything to do with Caesars. I would encourage you, Thug Life Bear, to watch the series Catholicism by then Father Robert Barron, who's now Bishop Robert Barron. He actually goes to all those ancient sites, and he does a really good job breaking down like the origins of Christianity. Another good series to watch is called The Footprints of God, written by a local Catholic apologist, friend of mine in Michigan named Steve Ray. He goes to all those ancient sites. He chronicles the beginnings of Catholicism. For people that say that the Catholic Church started at the Edict of Milan, I always like to point them to ancient prayers. Like there's a prayer in 250 AD, for example, that says, "Oh, blessed Virgin Mary, conceived without sin, pray for us who have recourse to thee." I mean, that wasn't a Protestant prayer. No Protestant would own that prayer. No non-Catholic would own that prayer. The early church was the Catholic Church, you know? So, I mean, if you read the church fathers like Ignatius of Antioch, lots of them had very specific proclamations about the Catholic Church for where he would say, I forget which letter this was. He wrote to many of the same churches that St. Paul wrote to. he said, for where the bishop is, there is Jesus Christ, and where there is Jesus Christ, there is the Catholic Church. Ignatius of Antioch was the first to use that term. So, and that was back in 110 AD. So that's my take on it. That's like the drive-by, no notes, really tired at 10:30 at night Thailand answer. But I would encourage you to look at those resources.
Yeah. Okay. Robert Barron, right? Yeah. I've heard
Yeah,
of
Robert
him.
Barron, Catholicism, and then Steve Ray, Footprints of God.
Because I was gonna follow up on that with like a stray comment about pacifism. If you guys want to give a couple of cents on that, I have another stray theory that wasn't really the total hippie pacifism stuff, and not standing for any of your boundaries wasn't really a thing until the 1960s.
Totally.
Like before that, it doesn't seem like it's a workable morality to work off your ideas off of.
Yeah, I think pacifism is like the cardinal virtue of slave morality, right? Because they're defenseless, or they're in a position of no power, so they're using that as a virtue, saying, "Oh, I'm a pacifist," and it's mostly because they couldn't do anything even if they tried, right?
Yeah.
Because
now they made it a moral virtue that, oh, I'm a pacifist. I'm not like those other guys fighting each other and climbing corporate ladders and doing all that crap. And so, like, they're creating a morality out of their deficiency.
Because it looks suspiciously like you can't really claim that it's moral to not be physically strong or violent, unless the entire world has banned war.
Yeah.
I would say historically, Christianity has never been a pacifist religion. It is a non-violent religion. It is a defensive religion at that. So it doesn't advise humanity to not indulge its more base senses of violence. But it definitely endorses self-defense. It definitely, just war and these different types of things. I don't see any grounds in the scriptures to suggest, or even in the church fathers, that suggest this was ever a pacifist thing. Bobby's right. It was something that came out of the Jesus movement in the 60s.
Oh, I believe. As a matter of fact, one of the most famous sayings of Jesus is also the single most misinterpreted saying of Jesus. And that's to turn the other cheek. Most people have no clue what that means. What turn the other cheek means, it actually means the polar opposite of what everybody else thinks. Most people, they think, oh, turn the other cheek, that means to let somebody smack you. No, what it actually means, if you look at the culture of the time in which Jesus said that, when he said, if someone strikes you, turn and offer him your other cheek. In other words, the way that somebody would slap you with their backhand, that's how you would backhand a slave. That's how you'd backhand someone who's like beneath you. So when Jesus said to turn the other cheek, what he basically meant to say is you're protesting that you're actually better than that person who's smacking you by turning your cheek so that they can hit you with the other side of their hand, which is how they would smack someone who's not beneath them. Like that's how they would smack like an equal or even a superior. I'm giving like a terrible breakdown of it, but Augustine really went into that in his homily in the Sermon on the Mount. And it actually means because think about it, when Jesus was quote unquote smacked, when his hour had come and he allowed himself to succumb to human, humiliation and crucifixion and all that, he didn't turn the other cheek. In fact, he challenged the guy who hit him. He said, "Why did you strike me? I've spoken freely. What have I said for you to strike me?" He didn't strike him back, obviously. Well, at least not in this life.
Yeah, but I used to always say the weapon of Christians is shrewdness, right? We're supposed to be as gentle as doves, but shrewd as vipers. Shrewd is a weapon,
Wisdom,
yeah. And and this is something I had a fun talk with my friend the other day. But I don't think the word is as bad as it is, right? I feel like almost most things we do is some form of manipulation. And to me, shrewdness and manipulation are very synonym, right? Where you're trying to use stuff to your advantage of what you're trying to further pursue, whether it be your own selfish interest or your mission for God, right? I think Apostle Paul was one of the shrewdest people ever, right? He was very creative and conniving in how he evangelized and went around the world. So,
what was one of Jesus' critiques? He said that sons of this world are more shrewd than the sons of light. I think it was in Luke 16 he said that.
Yeah.
In other words, take a cue.
money, but yeah.
True, but if you think about it, a lot of secular people run circles around a lot of Christian when it comes to just having common sense and how to conduct yourself. That's one of the reasons why I don't believe that the book. That's why I think 48 Laws of Power is a must read for every Christian.
Mhm.
Not to necessarily practice everything it teaches, but to defend yourself against it. When that book first came out, I think it was 2014. Whenever Robert Greene first published that, my initial gut reaction is, man, what a terrible book. I'd become a terrible person. And
Yeah,
this
it's
guy
banned in prison. I want to talk
Yeah.
about it so much at my work, but I'm not allowed to.
I know.
Because I deal with a lot of people in the court system. Yeah.
But it's like Denzel said in Training Day, you know, to catch to protect the wolf, you have to become a wolf. And to catch a wolf, or what do you say? To protect the sheep, you have to catch the wolf. And to catch the wolf, you got to become a wolf. So in other words, you have to know what the tactics of wolves are in order to defend yourself. Doesn't mean you have to become a predatory wolf and lie and deceive, but you do have to have wits about you. Like you do have to know how the powerful operates so that you can guard yourself against it.
Yeah, I heard a very similar analogy. It was talking about wolves eat sheeps, but sheepdogs protect sheeps against wolves, right?
Right.
A sheepdog and a wolf are both dogs. They're not sheep, right?
Exactly.
And it's not necessarily moral to pretend that wolves don't exist. And that's not actually, yeah.
Actually immoral.
Yeah. And if you want to take it one higher, why is the wolf eating the sheep? I don't think it's because he's evil.
He's hungry.
Exactly.
He's trying to meet a need, whether it's healthy or unhealthy, given your analogy. But yeah, can you empathize with a wolf?
Well, if we have, do we have any other guests? Otherwise, what do you guys say we do our final round? And I'm going to call it a night here in Thailand.
Yeah, okay. I will get off the lobby. Most of this is shout out to Conk and a big thank you for that one little tidbit story there. Used it to great effect. I think she got the message. They both got the message.
But feel free to. I'm going to put all of our links in our description. You can feel free to email me if you want to talk more about it. Right? I'll put it. I think I forgot to when I made the broadcast. So
I believe it. I believe every man, there's 2 umbilical cords every man has to cut, and most men only cut the first, and that's the physical umbilical cord.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to cut that emotional, spiritual umbilical cord too to your mom, or you're never going to be a man.
Yeah, that's the same conclusion I came to. Yesterday, I was talking to another one of my friends. It's difficult to go out on your own and find your and rent your own place. So he's living with his parents, and I told him the same theory I had about invisible umbilical cords. And I told him I think that the second one that men have to do is it's that one that we have to cut yourselves.
I mean, think about this. If you think of all the moral exhortations in the Bible, hundreds, if not thousands of them, what was the very first moral exhortation in all of Scripture? It was Genesis 2:25, that a man leaves his mother and father and cleaves to his wife. So in other words, the very first moral advice Scripture gives us is get out of the house, grow up, become a man, and get out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Cut that umbilical cord, man. So good on you for doing that. Thanks to Conk.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, man, it was good having you on,
bro.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to say something for a while. I just didn't know how to do it. Anyway, I'll leave you guys to it.
All right, have a good one, man.
Yep, you too.
Take care, bro.
I love that handle, man. Thug Life Bear. That's one of the most. Like I said, I've had Tupac songs swirling in my head the whole time.
Good man.
Remember, guys, thug is in the heart, you know.
Because if your man ain't loving you right, you're lonely and depressed. You need a thug in your life. Like that's all I've had going through my head.
All righty, let's do our final thoughts. Amos, what's up? What's your final thought here?
If I had a thought,
there's a lot on Twitch I've heard. Yeah, if there's a lot of thoughts on Twitch, you can probably grab one of those. We're spelling it different. Sorry.
Homonyms. You and your homonyms, Conk.
That's all I know. It's the meme life.
No homo. So yeah, it's really tricky because you gotta really I think when talking about the slave versus master morality and how you go about deciding on how you want to live your life, you want to really examine like what are your goals, what are your principles, and then apply those as equally as possible. Because when you try to change them for one thing and don't change them for another, it's really confusing. So I tend to see the church will get really, they'll be on board with one guy because they think he's the whatever candidate, but they're totally off board with another guy who's probably following more principles that maybe they won't follow that they claim to follow because of other things. So, if someone comes along as probably a more moral, more Christian candidate than like people who have been in office, he probably wouldn't be a Republican or Democrat. But then he wouldn't be supported either because he doesn't play the game. So, take it how you want. So you really want to be cautious to understand like where is the line drawn? Where do you really believe on like do you believe in freedom? Do you believe in using the state to do things? Do you believe that people should do things on their own? That's how you want to look at like how to justify like Christians' involvement in not only in their own lives, their own communities, but also how that affects the rest of the country and the rest of the world. So,
yeah, for sure. All right, Bobby, what's your final thought?
My final thoughts are, slavery. That's such a broad term. There's so many different ways that you can be a slave that I would say that from a dogmatic perspective, obviously Christianity does not want us to have a slave mentality. It wants us to be free. Whom the Son sets free is free indeed. Whoever commits a sin is a slave to sin. So we could be slaves to sin. We could be slaves to, as the Catholic Church teaches, our three adversaries: the world, the flesh, and the devil. Those are our three main enemies that we have to strive against, and to not be slaves to any one of those, so that we could be a free slave of Christ, and just be completely controlled by him and his desires, which is for our good, for our holiness, for our sanctification, for our ultimate happiness with him in the next life. And we just have to do everything we can to get there and to prepare for it. So those are my closing half-brained, no-note thoughts.
Amen. Do we have any other thoughts really at the end of the day? Those are the only ones that count. All right,
these
Brooke.
DMs, not many thoughts.
All right, Brooke, what's your
Dang it, I forgot
takeaway?
to do my delay when he called me. Dang it.
Your internet got better. It's good.
Yeah, my final thoughts is, man, I'm really tired and I could use a coffee. But beyond that, it's an interesting discussion. I knew when we opened the Pandora's box on the issue of abortion, that was definitely going to spice things up.
What, really?
Yeah,
it's pretty clean and dry.
We'll definitely do an entire show on that, and I think we should do a show on church structure as well. I think that'll be an interesting discussion.
Absolutely.
In terms of how it's laid out and how it's evolved and stuff like that. I mean, just in terms of, I echo the sentiment of our two panelists here. I think we need the distinction between the role of government versus the role of the believer, and even the institution of the church. I think it while there is overlap, I think they should kind of stay in their lane and stay within the grounds of which they have their most influence. I don't always think it's a good idea when they cross paths, too aggressively, as we've seen through the Middle Ages and elsewhere when Christian nations rose up. They didn't last very long because usually the barbarians would swoop in and, basically crush whatever monastery and whatever was there, which basically led the phrase Machiavelli, right? He wrote the book in the 1500s to debunk the idea of a Christian king. He's like, look, if you want to have a successful, some kind of kingdom, you cannot have Christian morality. And I've been reading The Prince recently, and I mean, it's some pretty dark stuff. But there's also a lot in there about character and being strong and holding up to your virtues and stuff like that, even to what might be unpopular. And unfortunately, if you hold to Christian morality, sometimes in those very tough decisions where there might be death on both sides and you got to choose the lesser of two evil and nobody's going to really come out as a winner, the church is not, religion is not the best answer in those scenarios. So I think we need to have a little more of a nuanced view. So yeah, those are my 2 cents on it.
Awesome. Man, that was almost 3 cents. You were really pushing it. Right? Well, all right. For my final thought, it's going to sound weird, but I want to start with my definition, or end with my definition of power and how I explain it to people. Right? Usually, you start a broadcast with Webster Dictionary defines power as, but I'm doing it now. I do what I want. This is my
Save the best for last.
But how? Because a lot of people always say knowledge is power or money is power, but I think those are half true. I think the root of those is that options is power, right? Both of those, the more money you have and the more knowledge you have, the more options and doors you can go through. And so when you're a slave and you're literally in chains, you don't have a lot of options. It's, do I sit here or do I do what the guy tells me and so I don't get hit, right? Essentially, at the end of the day, that's a slave's options. You know what I mean? And so I think the 48 Laws of Power book and all of that is super useful. And a little fun fact, the fastest way to learn the 48 Laws of Power is play Magic the Gathering cards, because all of it is about information control. It uses a lot of the laws of power to be good at Magic. So that's a little fun shout out. But yeah, I think when you're in that slave morality and you have no option, so your only option is to pretend you're the good guy in that scenario, right?
Yeah, funny you bring up Magic the Gathering, since Wizards of the Coast is completely playing into the slave morality in a sense.
Yeah, they are. They're 100%. Yeah, I read a very interesting article about how much Nietzsche would hate the current social justice cancel culture, because it is all slave morality at the end of the day. They just think everyone's oppressed all of the time, and we all need to fight to get out of it instead of like your own agency and sense of control, right? But I mean, Wizards of the Coast has been playing that SJW Get Woke Go Broke for years, but they haven't gone broke yet. So it's mostly because cards are expensive. But they're taking the Christian bookstore approach, where they have a very specific small base and they just make everything overpriced to break even, right? but
orcs are racist, man.
Oh yeah, that's great. Also, fun thing about Wizards of the Coast, and all of the Magic cards, all of the angels are women and all of the devils are male. Exclusively. There is no male angels and there's no female demons in Magic the Gathering history. Yeah. So that's fun. That's a little
anyways.
No, fuck you, bye.
And I'm good at it. So I need to be good. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're a Christian and you want to make any kind of influence, like, you're going to have to learn to be shrewd. You're going to have to learn to create options that aren't there, right? I mean, Jesus' parable of the shrewd manager, right? He got mad at the people that did the same old, right? He was proud of the guy that thought outside the box, even if it looked like what he was doing was morally wrong. He still got honored as being shrewd.
You suggesting that Jesus was a Karen?
He was very
the shrewd manager.
Jesus wouldn't wear a face mask. You wouldn't tell me to. But
let's hear the both sides of that.
But anyway, yeah, well,
the lead Pharisee.
All right, well, yeah, we'll wrap up the show. All right, next week I believe we're on Brooks' channel.
Yeah, there might be an issue with that because I might be traveling, so I'll let you know. Because I may not have internet until well after. So we
could do a special train episode or something.
Yeah. We'll figure it out, but I'll let you know. But so far, yes, it should be on my channel. Links below.
All right, awesome.
Before I hop off, someone say good night to me, please.
Have a great night, Bobby.
You too, Conk.